Hey everybody, welcome back. We are to video number 4. This is going to be a continuation of our activity phase that we discussed in video 3. And we'll keep working through movement, combat, leadership, that type of thing. First off, thank you to everybody who's watched those previous videos. You guys have had a lot of nice things to say about them, so I appreciate that. It's good to know that potentially these could actually be helping somebody learn the game. I enjoy doing them regardless, so I probably do it anyways, but yes. In my pure genius, I decided to delete the last scenario that we were playing. I think I have everything set up where it should be. So let's go ahead and get started. What I want to focus on starting off and talking about in this video is going to be moving and firing. There's a lot of instances in the game where charging is not going to be your best choice. Like I said in the previous video, charges really are meant to force the defender to make a morale check. You want to have a lot of cumulative die roll modifiers on that morale chart right here and over here to force them to get results that might be down on this part of the morale table. If you just want to get up and start plinking in front of somebody, you're going to have the ability to do that without moving. For instance, in the last video, this guy was able to take a fire combat into here, forced him to take cowardly leg or a shaken result and lay a cowardly legs. You can also move up to half of your movement points and still fire. What that's going to do, however, is it's going to give the defending units a chance to do one of those opening volleys at you. There's a little bit of a give and take here. If you remember that table, the opening volley table, you'll see that at longer ranges, the chances of them hitting are going to be fairly slim. They're going to need to roll 6 if you move and fire in a defending unit's line of sight at this range. The closer you are to them, the easier it is. Still, if you're 1 hex away, they're basically going to have a 1 in 2 chance of inflicting an SP loss on you. So what I want to do is let's take stone here, and let's go ahead and assume that Daniel, this stack right here, is going to be our target hex. I want to get over. They're kind of coming around the flank. I need to address that. Stone's going to take the 190 or 49th Pennsylvania, and they're going to move into a position where they can address that threat. So we're in the activity phase. I'm going to spend 1 to move these guys. Stone is just going to move with the regiment. He could move on his own. Really, at this point, there's no reason to do so. So he's going to spend 1, 2, and we're going to have to make a closing roll. One thing I don't know if I mentioned in the previous videos. Oh yeah, I did. Closing rolls, you have to have line of sight. If you don't have a line of sight to an enemy unit, then you don't have to make the closing roll. Obviously, we can see him. We're going through the railroad cut here. So I'm going to have to make a closing roll to move into N2428. So let's go ahead and make that roll. A 6. So we're going to be good. One thing I do want to mention about those closing rolls are if you have a good leader with you who has a 2 or better morale rating, you'll see that Stone has a 4. You're going to get a benefit to those closing roll table rolls. So that 6 is actually a 7. If we would have rolled a 2, for instance, they're a B regiment, we would have failed if we didn't have the leader with us, but that leader would have given us the +1 to allow us to move into there. So we can close, and that's going to be our 3rd movement point. You'll see that the 45th North Carolina is a pretty big regiment. That's an R9 unit with an A morale rating and a good leader, and we are an R9 unit with a good leader and a B morale rating. So it really does me no good to try to charge into there. So what I'm going to do is I've moved 3 movement points. That's up to half of my movement, and I'm going to declare I'm taking a fire combat at this stack right here. So the defending player my opponent is going to say, okay, I have an opening volley. So we're going to go back to that opening volley because I moved. I'm in his line of sight. He's going to be able to take basically a free defensive fire shot at me. Now, important to note, if this guy was facing this way and actually did not have line of sight to me, but he had a unit here on this crest line, he would still get an opening volley shot even though the stack that I'm firing at cannot see me. Because this guy has line of sight and I moved in front and am firing, he would become the one taking that opening volley. You would obviously use his range, so instead of being at range 1 like we were here, this would be at range 2. Something to keep in mind. That'll come up occasionally. So, go to the opening volley table. We are at range 1, so the Confederates need to roll a 4 or a 6 to inflict an SP loss. Remember, attacking units or units that are in their activity phase never take morale checks. So even if he inflicts an SP loss, we don't then go to the morale table. So we'll take our 1d6, a 2, boom, we're safe. That's good for them. If he would have succeeded in inflicting an SP loss on Stone, or the 149th Pennsylvania, Stone would have then been required to check to see if he's hit. This is a roll that your opponent always takes against your leaders. So if he inflicted that opening volley loss, he would then get to roll on the leader loss table against Stone. This is one of those things where having good leaders on the front line is very beneficial for the morale modifiers when you're taking fire, but you're also going to put them in positions where they're going to potentially be killed. In this case, this would be considered an other case, this column. It's not a charge. We're not trying to capture anybody. We would need to roll a 2d6, and if it was an 11, he would be wounded. If it was a 12, he would be killed. Those actually come up a lot more than you would think. Obviously, rolling boxcars is not something that happens terribly often. The first time I ever played the series, when I had the Peach Orchard scenario laid out, I moved Barksdale up with the very first stack, opening volley, killed. So it happens. It happens actually quite a bit. So no losses inflicted on the moving stack. So now the 149th Pennsylvania is going to take their combat roll. So he's an R9 unit, so we're going to be on the 6 to 8 column. If we go to the combat table, the 6 to 8 column, and there's going to be no shifts. We're not firing into the rear. He's not DG. There's no protective terrain, none of that stuff. So 6 to 8 column, 2d6, we give it a roll. A 7. I believe that's going to be an SP loss. Yes. So they're going to take a loss. We'll decrease their strength. And now, because they received an SP loss, we're going to have to do one of those leader loss checks against Daniel. So the Union player rolls to see if they shot and killed Daniel. So we'll go back to that table real quick. Sorry for the scrolling, but I feel like it's probably beneficial for you guys to be able to see this stuff when I'm talking about it. So this is going to be one of those other cases. We're going to need to roll an 11 to wound him or a 12 to kill him. So nothing happens. That's good for the Confederate player because now Daniel is going to use his morale rating as a modifier for the 45th North Carolina's morale check. So the 45th North Carolina is an A-rated unit, and he's now going to have a -3 to his morale check. I would say that there's no chance of anything happening, but when we look at those charts, you'll see these BLs listed up here. That means Bloodlust. If we roll a natural 2, 3, or 4 on a 2d6 without any of those other modifiers, that's going to allow our unit that just received fire to become bloodlusted. Bloodlust is going to do a couple different things for you. It's going to allow you to ignore, I think, morale results. You'll take losses, but if you're bloodlusted and you would take a shaken result, you would ignore the shaken result and lose the bloodlust. It's going to give you beneficial modifiers if you decide to charge, and it's going to allow you to close for free regardless of your situation. So we'll take a morale check here. Oh, I'm at the right place. So a 2d6 with a -3. He is a 5. I think that's just going to miss the bloodlust. Yep. So nothing happens. He's okay right there. That's the end of that little combat. So as you'll see, moving and firing is beneficial because it does allow you to get into better positions, and you can potentially inflict losses on your opposition and force them to take morale checks. The disadvantage to that is you're going to be subject to taking quite a bit of fire from those opening volleys. Those SP losses really start to stack up fairly quick. So that's where the tactical interest in this game system really starts to develop. When you're closing with the enemy, how do you want to do it? Do you want to move to a certain range and just start plinking away at your next turn? Do you want to force your enemy to move up close and then fire, giving you those opening volleys, which are basically freebies? Some interesting decisions to make. So let's keep working down the line and check out what our Iron Brigade is doing down here. I think we're going to try to move the 7th Wisconsin into a more defensible position. You'll see these guys are coming down. I don't want them to be able to get enflating fire on me. And I've got the famous John Burns in here. I think if my history serves me right, this was some dude who was a citizen of Gettysburg and picked up a musket and helped out or something. So let's go ahead, keep moving people for now. We're going to go 1. If you remember right, when we spend a movement point to change facing, you can face in any direction. It's not necessarily just 1, 2, or anything like that. You can spend 1 and you can face in any direction. So I'm going to spend 1, 2, 3 to change back, and then I'm going to fire. So this will be a good instance for us to talk a little bit about line of sight. This unit is going to be assumed to literally be on the crest line up here. Let's say that I want to fire at the 40th Virginia down here. When I string my line of sight, I have to physically place the beginning point of my firing unit along that crest line right there. It's always assumed to be at the highest elevation for the starting and the end point. What that's going to mean for the target hex is that the 40th Virginia is going to be assumed to be on this part of the hex right here. You'll notice that there's a little bit of a shade difference in the contour lines. This little run kind of comes through here. Obviously, the terrain kind of naturally maybe dips down towards that run. So when I string my line of sight, I physically have it on the crest line, and I can take that anywhere into that elevation in the hex. That's important because if, for instance, this hex right here was filled with trees, I wouldn't be able to string my line of sight through there. But because I can put it anywhere on that elevation, if I do something like that, you'll notice that I would miss that hex entirely. This game, the maps allow you to manipulate the line of sight a little bit more than other games that I've played previously. I like it. It makes it feel natural. It gives you some ability to play with the line of sights a little bit. Pretty easy stuff. So I'm going to take that shot, which is going to give the 40th Virginia the opportunity to take an opening volley. So this is going to be a 1d6 because I moved in front of him and am now firing. He's going to be at range 3, so I'm going to have to roll a 6 to do anything. Nope. So These guys don't have to take a loss. Now they're going to roll their fire combat at range 3. So we're going to be on the 4 to 5 column. Oops. Let's see if we can find that. And we're going to get 2 shifts for being at range 3 and being regular units. So that's going to take us down to the 1 column. Let's go ahead and make a roll. A 5 is going to be a big nada. So no result, nothing happens there. Perfect. So let's take a look at the situation the 19th Indiana is in. This is, oh, maybe I could zoom in a little bit more here. Ooh, that gets blurry. I don't like that. So, the 19th Indiana, let's say I'm wanting to take a shot. Okay, well, we're going to have an interesting line of sight question here because I'm assumed to be on this higher elevation. If I wanted to take this shot, I need to fire from that higher elevation. This unit is going to be assumed to be on the highest elevation in his hex. If you'll notice, there's a slight little sliver of a different shade elevation in that hex. So the endpoint for the target unit is going to have to be somewhere on that part of the hex. Just based on the nature of these maps, you're going to have instances where there's a tiny little bit of hex that might be at a different elevation and you can't tell if it's actually in the hex because there's a slope line. Don't get worked up about it. Just roll a die if you don't know. Do what makes sense. People get really worked up about that sort of thing. Don't let it affect you. It's really not that hard. So I would have to take a shot from somewhere up on that elevation to somewhere in this portion of this target hex. So let's say I go there. Okay, can I see him? Well, the answer is going to be no. And the reason being is on this elevation right here that kind of goes around this little knoll, you'll see that there's forest. There's trees there. Well, those are a +3 obstacle height. So I'm at a 1 obstacle height higher than the defending unit, but I have a 3-level obstacle that's on 1 level below. So basically I'm at a net -2 obstacle height. There's no way that I can see that. I can't shoot through those trees. Places like Culp's Hill, Little Round Top, those become a little more difficult if you're shooting at extended ranges with artillery. For line of sight, maybe when we get to that, we'll look at the slope table and do some calculations on that. I'm going to leave him where he is for now, though. So let's take a look at the rest of our units. We're ignoring artillery. I have Biddle's brigade down here, who is the 1st Brigade in Rowley's division. He's well within range of Doubleday. Biddle's well within range of Rowley. He has these units kind of spread out down here. I'm not going to look up the scenario right now because I'm pretty sure that their orders are just kind of to defend McPherson's Ridge. So what I'm going to do is just position them in kind of a supporting line over into here. I want to make the Confederate player think twice about rolling up this flank because then they're going to expose themselves. So let's go ahead and move these guys. We'll go 1, 2, 3. Okay, in this instance, I want to fire at this guy, but I'm going to attempt to explain why I cannot and some of the line of sight. This is a little bit of vagary in the rules for me. It's just not very clear. But because we're not at a range of 5 or more, the slope table is not used to determine whether or not this unit can see this unit. What I do know is that I'm considered to be on this portion of this hex on this crest line, and he's considered to be on this portion of this hex along here. Now, if I string a line of sight, well, I'd have to physically string it from there to there. You'll notice that we're going to cross some trees that are hugging that run that comes down through there. Those trees are a +3 obstacle height. Because he's on a location that's only 2 elevation higher than where those trees originate, I would think that that level 3 obstacle height is higher than his level 2 from where they originate. To me, that means that they're blocked. Where does it talk about that? There's a concept of same hill, and I don't know if that applies in this situation. I don't think so, because those trees basically are, they're going to eliminate our ability. We're at too close of a range. We can't see each other. That's how I've played it. That's how I'm going to play it here. They can't see each other. That's it. All right. If I'm wrong on that, somebody please send me a message. Teach me how to do that. This guy's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He's going to turn for 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so I think we've moved everybody that we want to in this instance. Let's go ahead and end our activity phase. So when we do that, we go to the rally phase. So we're going to rally anybody that needs to improve their morale. I don't have anybody who's shaken. If I did, they would become normal morale. If I had somebody who was disorganized, they would become shaken, so on and so forth. This is also where you roll for units who are routed. We don't have any of those right now, so we don't need to worry about it. We remove all cowardly legs at this point. I'll take the fired markers off, take move markers off the counters, and we'd be going back to the Confederate portion of the turn. We'll skip the Confederate orders phase. There's nothing to do there. We're going to jump right back into the Confederate activity phase. So the first thing I'm going to do is roll for our boy Brockenbrow up here and see if his brigade has full movement point allowances. When I do that, I'm basically forcing myself to move that brigade first. So it's going to be a 1d6. If you remember right, a 1 result is they cannot move. A 2 to 3 is they have half movement point, and a 4 to 6 is they have full movement point. So they're going to have full movement points. Let's go ahead and see if we can start moving forward and closing in on our objectives. So we're going to go 1, 2, and we're going to take a shot at the 150th Pennsylvania. So this is going to give us a chance to take a look at the opening volley from a different unit. Because the 150th Pennsylvania has a line of sight that's like this, due to his facing, he's not going to be the one taking the opening volley. It's going to be the 7th Wisconsin. And he's going to be at a range of 2, so we'll do a 1d6 roll for the opening volley. A 6 is going to be a hit. So we can pull that up. I've probably zoomed in too far on this. It does not want to load for me. So opening volley at range 2. We needed a 5 or 6. We rolled a 6. The 55th Virginia is going to have to take an SP loss. This is an example of kind of being whittled away with those opening volleys. But we are going to have a pretty cool shot at the 150th Pennsylvania, and we're going to get some shifts, which are going to help us out. So our strength is 4. We are going to be on the 4 to 5 column of the combat table to begin with. We're going to take a shift left for being at range 2, so that's going to put us on the 2 to 3. But we're also going to get a 2 shift right for firing into the rear of that unit. So that's going to shift us back up to the 6 to 8. Let me see if I can find the picture that shows an example of that. I believe we did this in the last video, but it's going to be beneficial to show it again. So when you're taking fire and you're the target, our shot is going to be coming at the unit kind of like this. So even if it's along those hex sides where it's, you know, right along him facing this direction or being rear here, this is going to be considered a rear shot. The way I think of it is I got to fire from the higher elevation. I go into his hex. I can pick anywhere that I want to fire. We're obviously going into his back. So we're going to be on the 6 to 8 column with a 2d6, a 10. We'll go to the combat table. A 10 on a 6 to 8 is a 2-hit. Ouch. So this guy is going to decrease his strength by 2. And he's now going to have to take a morale check. He is a C-rated unit. And he's also going to have a +2, which you'll see up here, for taking fire from his rear. So that's going to be a 2d6. A 6 is actually going to be an 8. On a C is going to be an SHB1. One thing I do want to say while we're looking at the morale results is that you always need to take them and apply the results from left to right. So you're always going to be affecting the morale state of the unit, then doing your retreats, then doing your losses. That's because units that are retreating through other units could potentially apply their negative morale state on those units that they're retreating through. So that's why you need to do it in that order. So I just forgot what our result was. An SHB1. So he's going to shake. We'll lower his morale. And he's going to go B1. Where do we want to go? Let's go here. We're going to need to place a Cowardly Legs marker. And you'll notice that I conveniently placed that in a position where it's now going to affect this unit if it's forced to take a morale check this turn. Let's just keep moving here. We'll go 1. He's going to make a closing roll. We're going to do some stupidity here and see if he can enter this hex right here. So he's a C morale unit. He's going to need a 4 to 6 on a 1d6. Nope, he can't. So because he failed his closing roll, even if he had used 3 SP and was or 3 movement points, sorry, and was trying to use a 4th to close and he failed, he can still claim that he wants to fire now, which he's going to do. So he's going to say, I'm going to fire here. The 7th Wisconsin is going to get an opening volley at range 2. I know that a 1 is not good enough to do a hit on anything. And now we're going to take our fire combat with the 40th Virginia. So he's at range 2. He's a 5 SP unit, so he's going to be on the 4 to 5 column. But he's going to be shifted down 1 for range. Is there any other modifiers? I don't believe so. So he's going to be shifted to the 2 to 3. We'll give a 2d6. An 8 should be good enough for something. It's going to be a morale check. So the 7th Wisconsin, he's going to get John Burns modifier, so a -2 to his morale check. Got that table. We'll take a 2d6 for the morale. That's not going to affect him. A units are fairly resilient. It takes a lot to push them back unless they're rolling horrendously, especially when you have good leaders with them. Once you get them whittled down, or you can wreck them, or if you can get in behind them, place Cowardly Legs, those are some tactics to use to try to get those A-rated morale units to budge a little bit. A lot of this game gives me a sense of Seesaw back and forth type action. A lot of the results that we did with the Union last turn were really good up here. We pushed this guy back, we eliminated another unit, but then on the Confederate turn, as the Confederate player, I'm going to feel like there's a lot of really good things that I'm doing. And it gives you that back and forth tempo, I think, that makes the solitaire play of the system really interesting as well. I really prefer playing it opposed just because it's a blast opposed, especially once you start to incorporate the order system. But for solo play, it really maintains your interest from both sides as well. Let's just keep moving here. This guy's now going to go 1, 2, and he's going to attempt to make a closing roll straight ahead. He's got to do that because the 7th Wisconsin can see him. He can see him as well. He's a C-rated unit. He's going to need a 4 to 6. He can. So he's going to hop into there. And let's take a shot at the 7th Wisconsin. So they're going to get an opening volley. And I'm going to start speeding up through this a little bit. A 6 at range 1. That's going to be a hit on this guy. He's now going to roll against Brockenbrow to see if he kills him. Nope. And the 47th Virginia now makes his fire combat at the 7th Wisconsin. He's a 3 strength, 2 to 3 column, no shifts for range. An 8. I believe that's a morale check. Yep. So the 7th Wisconsin is going to take another morale check. That is going to be a Bloodlust. Ooh, buddy. So we'll actually increase his morale. He becomes Bloodlust. If you're playing the physical copy of the game, there's a marker for that. I'll just put that on there as a reminder. And let me show you where that was at on the morale chart. He's an A-rated morale unit. He rolled a natural 4. One other thing to keep in mind when Bloodlust comes into play is that it only happens when you're receiving fire from an adjacent unit. So if this guy had taken the shot from here and inflicted a 4 morale result, he's not going to become bloodlusted because he's not adjacent. But because he's adjacent, that fulfills the requirement. Bloodlust is good. And now this guy is going to become a wild man next turn because he's going to have free closing rolls. He's going to ignore some morale results, all sorts of fun stuff. So let's just move some other people here real quick. We can look at some of the terrain issues and how they're going to be affected. And I think I'm going to set myself up for failure just to prove a point and show some things here. Who do I want to do it with? So let's take the 4040 or the 22nd Virginia Battalion. He's going to go 1, 2 for crossing this right here, and 3, 4 because he's entering into a hex with these slope lines. Well, let me see exactly what they're called here. I don't want to misinform you. Okay, so he's entering inclined ground, which are these little hash mark looking things, and it's inclined ground with 0 to 2 slope lines, so that's going to cost 2 movement points to move into. So he went 1 into here, 2 to cross that hex side, 3, 4 into there. Now he doesn't have to make a closing roll because when he's here, these woods are blocking line of sight, so they can't see each other. He can't fire because he spent over half of his movement points. He's going to be stuck there. That's probably not a good position to be in because he's a D-rated morale unit. But like I said, I'm going to do this to maybe prove a point and show something. So he's going to go 1, 2, 3. Pettigrew's going to go 1. This guy's going to go 1, 2, 3. And we're going to call that good. All right, so let's say the Confederate player's done. They don't want to do anything else. That's probably dumb, but whatever. Daniel's not going to do anything, so I'll take moves off. We will go to the rally phase, where we take our shaken guy and we'll make him become normal morale. We'll remove our cowardly legs, and we'll go to the Union turn. They have no orders that they're going to do in their orders phase. They go to their activity phase. So what I want to show you here, as long as I get the correct results, is how stacking up like this can be a really bad thing. Just for fun, let's throw this guy into here too and say that he had moved there. The first thing I'm going to do is take a shot with Meredith into the 22nd Virginia Battalion. One thing to keep in mind is you can always have line of sight to adjacent units, regardless of what the terrain is. That's good to know. So he's not going to get an opening volley because I'm not moving. If you're just taking a fire action without moving, you don't give the defender the option for the opening volley. So I'm going to have a 7 and a 3 strength unit that are firing into there. So that's going to be 10 SP. You can only ever fire with a maximum of 8 SP out of a hex. That's important to keep in mind, because stacking up units that maybe you've got 14 or 15 SP in a hex doesn't really do you any good, because you can only fire with 8 SP out of that hex. Separating those regiments into different hexes is going to give you more frontage to be able to put more firepower towards your opposing player. So we're going to be on the 6 to 8 column. Let's go ahead and roll for our fire combat. A 7. Perfect. So that's going to give us a SP loss on the 22nd VA. As you can see, a 7, that's just a 1 SP, barely hit the 1. So now he's going to have to make a morale check. He is a D-rated unit. Let's take a look at the D column. You'll notice that it's really bad. Now, I don't think he has any other modifiers in this instance. He's not small yet. He's not being attacked from the rear, not wrecked. So we'll make a 2d6. A 7. So a 7 for a... Oh, yes. Okay. So we got an SHB2 result. This is good. Now I can explain a few things. So he has to take his morale first, and now he has to take his B2 result. So he's got a situation here, because he's going to have to retreat through some of his own units, which is going to affect them in adverse ways. He has a couple options. He could move into a hex with one of these units. They take on the morale state of that unit retreating through them. Oops. So he would become shaken, and then they can retreat with him. That's an option. Another option is he could move into here, displace this unit, causing him to lose or lower his morale by 1, and then move back into there. Now, each one of these subsequent movements where you move out of the way is going to place a cowardly leg. So in that instance, there'd be a cowardly legs here, and then he would have to place another cowardly legs for moving this guy out of the way. Let's say he doesn't want to do any of that. We'll increase his morale back to where it was at. So the final option that we have is to move through units. What you would do in this instance is this stack would move into this hex. Then you take the worst morale state in the hex and you worsen it by 1 and apply it to all the units in the hex. So this guy now, because he's shaken, he's the worst morale state, worsens to DG. He applies it to the other unit in the hex, and he continues on his retreat. That's an option that I don't know if you'd want to use very often, but it is an option. So those are some quick examples of some things you don't want to do when you're trying to figure out how you want to retreat. You might want to leave some gaps in your line so that you can retreat if you need to without affecting everybody else. I'm running a little bit long-winded on this video. Let's wrap it up, and we'll see what we start up with in the next one. Have a good one, guys.